A lot of the times when you see videos on model trains, the focus is on the trains themselves. Sometimes you get a little bit of scenery, sometimes you take a look at some of the buildings and other stuff, but very seldom you actually see anything focusing on what makes all this go round. So today, we're going to switch things up, literally. And we're going to be talking about all the switches that we have here on the secondhand Overland. We're also going to be touching on a new accessory activator track that we've added to a section of the switch yards to see how things work. So tag along. Let's check it out together. Let's start with the latest addition. This FasTrack is an operating track, and this 10-inch section of track has been around for a while, although it's been updated obviously to work with FasTrack. It's got this old school set of buttons to either uncouple or to unload, which is essentially to activate the middle rails. There's 5 rails on this thing. It's kind of sort of permanently attached though to the track. There's not like a plug or anything that makes this easy to run the cords underneath a table. So I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative with how I mount this, but for now, at least for today, since we just added it, this is gonna work just fine. There's a button on there to uncouple cars, and then there's also a button on there to activate the kind of 2 middle tracks for any operating cars. And we've had a couple of operating cars around here for a while, but we've never really had a chance to actually use them because I haven't had a track that does this. We were able to kind of activate one of them on accident over kind of an uneven section of one of our switches, but I think that's more down to a defect in how the car's contacts were assembled, essentially. But yeah, the one in the middle, you can see it here. It's actually opening up the operating car. In this case, it's a operating Rail King box car, and it's got this little cool signal man that comes out the side, and it closes back up. Again, that's with the essentially with the unload feature. Any car that has the outer rails or separate contacts is going to need to be over this section of track in order to work. The middle rail instead is going to activate this very strong magnetic section that can uncouple, but also on some older operating cars, some of them have a magnetic section in the middle that it can pull down on, like this old guy. Hey, there's Happy Harry. But it doesn't always seem to work sometimes on the older cars. If they've got kind of a weak switch or a weak spring, sometimes it uncouples, sometimes it doesn't. You've also got to be very deliberate with where you put this over. So on the one hand, it means you can uncouple cars without having to hold them. On the other, trying to position your trains exactly over this tiny spot to uncouple individual cars can be a little bit tedious. So it's almost better to have this section of track close to you so that way it's easier for you to access should something not quite go to plan. We obviously struggled with this, but thanks to placing this operating track close to the edge of our layout, we can still reach it and kind of fix things as we go. But it seems like the newer, more spring-in-their-step kind of couplers and features tend to work better on these, and the old stuff is old stuff. It's hit or miss. But hey, we're on the secondhand Overland, so there's a lot of old stuff here. 3-rail trains already have an excessive amount of rails, but these extra 2 make it 5. So, I mean, it's fine. It works. It just looks even more funny than 3-rail trains normally would. And I don't have any unloading cars that'll use this, but again, we do have this Rail King box car. I always wondered why this thing was so heavy and why only one of the doors worked. We had literally never seen this feature until we got this track. Once you get it started, it'll go through the rest of its sequence. There's a little guy that sticks out the side with a lit lantern. There's some boxes and other nice details in there, and he's really nicely painted. I really like this feature. And again, it's really nice to finally see this feature in action. The other thing that I like about this, at least on these, is once you get it started on the activator track, as long as there's still power to the track, it will keep going through its cycle. So you don't have to leave it there and wait for him to go in and out. You can have the train moving, and he'll just go out and come back in all on his own. Next up, we've got some switches, and the switch yards have a lot of them. All of these are 036 manual switches, and we started out on carpet with these, and they were just easy for my son to use, and so I decided when we designed the switch yards for our railroad on the layout, I wanted to have them easily accessible. Now, Big Boy's sort of in the way here, but as my son just demonstrated, it's no problem for him to reach up and over to get to those switches. There's several lines that go through here, and these get a lot of use. The switches should have had these neat little red signals on top of them like real ones would, but unfortunately the Lionel ones have a tendency to break off if you apply any sort of negative pressure to them. Twist them, you're fine. Hit it with a car or, bend it too hard one way or another and they can break off. So I've literally only got this one that's still intact. The other 4 switches have broken off. Now, granted, 2 of them we purchased had the switches, the tops broken off of them anyways, but they still function fine. The other thing that's neat about these is you can position these on other sides of the track. You can see on this one that I've managed to save here that there's these little circles. You can actually go underneath and switch which side of the track these go on, which was how I was able to orient all of the switches to be facing towards the edge of the layout so that we didn't have to reach over them. Again, they're very simple to use. They're not powered or anything like that, but they kind of don't need to be. We do have one powered switch, and it's really nice. It's got lit features to it. You can change the L to be different numbers in case you've got different switches and you don't want them all to look the same, so you can tell them apart. And the switch shows which way the tracks are oriented. Unfortunately, there's no way that I've been able to figure out to switch this one color to another, but they work fine. I really like this 072 switch. It gives us access to the trains that are underneath our elevated line, and it's got some neat features that are built into it. All of your switches that are powered can be used with the switch feature on remotes, which is nice if you want to program them in. But ours hasn't been programmed in yet. We've just been using it fine with the manual switch itself.
Can you switch it?
Unfortunately, you can't get manual switches for any of these larger, wider turns. You can only get manual switches with 036, which is another reason why our 072 is the only one that's powered. It's the right curve that we needed in order to get to stuff underneath the elevated line. And it works really great. It is a little bit cumbersome to use when you're trying to use conventional engines because it needs power on in order to work. So you've got to utilize that time in between, that delay, in order to get things going. It's, again, a little bit finicky to use when you've got conventional engines on the track, like the Bull Moose here. But if you're running it in command control and there's always power onto it, it's pretty easy to use. I also appreciate the feature that automatically switches if it detects a train coming the other direction. So it makes it really easy to use in our switchyard kind of scenario here that I've got built in to the side of the elevated line. However, my little engineer is pretty bright and is usually able to figure out when that switch needs to go the other way before trains reach it in the first place. He likes being able to time it and get it right, and it's always fun seeing him light up when he gets stuff right. So even though all the trains get the glory on here in most of the shots, it's still really fun utilizing these switches around, especially since it helps free up space on the main line. And since we've only got one main line to use, that's kind of an important deal around here. So I didn't want to go overlooked. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We definitely want to add some more operating cars so that way we can use that new section of track over there. Again, I need to get that switch wired underneath so that way it looks a little bit nicer and he doesn't have to reach over to use it. But otherwise, it's been a lot of fun utilizing these different features together here on the Secondhand Overland. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up next. Leave a like, comment, let us know how you use your switches and other features around your layout. What do you and don't you like? There's other kinds of track out there as well, so what do you prefer to use? Let us know down in the comments, and we'll see you all next time.
I think they're the same size.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think they're the same size. the same size.